Hey kids, and welcome to the show. Today I'm going through my notes and I'm trying to decide why it seems that I always seem to land on my feet. Now, the reason I say that is because I've gone through a lot of hard times in my life, but it seems like a lot of the decisions that I've made over the course of the last 20 years have actually panned out pretty well. They haven't been easy, but they've panned out pretty well. And I've learned what has caused things to turn out well and what has caused things to turn out not so well, and the differences. So I want to share some of that with you, and why right now is the time that you should be asking yourself, is it time to take a risk? So here it is. I've got myself one of these little composition books, and I write little notes, and I've got a whole bunch of different notebooks all over the place. And I'm always writing ideas, and if I have questions, I'll do stuff. And one of the ideas, I'm actually writing a couple of different books right now. One's, I'm kind of thinking about doing a graphic novel. I'm just kind of trying to decide how the characters are working out. So anyway, we've got some pictures in here. And one of my notes, and I don't really remember what caused it, but the question was simply, what does your money get you? And money is a pretty cool topic because everybody wants it and everybody wants more of it. And most people don't want to get it illegally. And I'm one of those people that like to get money, but I don't like to get it illegally. But I also like to share my money with people. So I don't tend to keep money around unless I have a goal with it to save towards. So what I've got going on right now is I'm going to tell you guys a couple ways to spend your money now that there's still stimulus checks coming out and a whole bunch of other things, and how you can be successful in your small business if you follow just a few simple rules. So here's the thing. Money is valuable as what money is. So if you find it valuable, it's valuable. If it's not valuable, it's not valuable. I know that sounds pretty basic, but you have these issues of inflation and you have these issues of deflation. So you don't want your money to go up and down too much because it messes with your commodities. So if you're planning to start a business, the first thing you want to do is make sure that if you fail and you step away, you haven't lost anything. And specifically, the four walls around your house and all those things. So how do you make sure that you will never find yourself on the wrong end of a failure? Well, the first and obvious thing is never start a business unless you have the cash to start it. So even if you have to borrow things to make things work, and you can't quite get the nice tool or the nice appliance or whatever it is, go as small as you can until you can prove that you've earned that appliance. And I've got a couple examples of how that's worked in my life. So I bought this little sandwich press when we had our food truck. It wasn't super expensive. It was a couple $100. It wasn't great, but I beat the crap out of it. And in about 2 months, it more than paid for itself, but it was just completely destroyed. So I upgraded. I got something a little nicer, and that one continued to last. Now that was a success, but there were times that I got things and they just didn't work at all. So I ended up just reselling those. So here's the important thing. When you are starting off, get used stuff, borrow stuff. Even if you have to return it when you're done, just clean it up, because you need to find out whether or not you can actually be successful. And if you can't be successful with the basics, you can't be successful when you have all of the tools. I like to talk about our food truck because that was a crazy adventure. So much so that 3 weeks after we opened, we blew the motor in that food truck. And we seriously, and this is one for the ages, but we actually had this food truck festival that we had to go to, and we paid a tow truck to tow our vehicle to the festival and park it. We did we had our generator, we got the kitchen going, we served our food, we packed up, and the tow truck operator came back, hooked up, and pulled us out. So sometimes you have to be creative. The reason that happened to us is because we spent $1,000 on a food truck, or an old FedEx truck. And my brother-in-law, Brad, I love the kid, he came down and he got that thing running. Even though it was sold as a seized engine, he got it running. We had the clean title. We got the thing on the road. We got this Kickstarter going. We raised some money after the fees and everything. We were able to get some basic kitchen appliances and kind of cash flowed the rest. We had borrowed this little 3-burner stove that I had to take apart, put back together every time we had an event. And literally I had to cook the rice, and once the rice was cooked, I had to move it. Oh, that's one of my lights. I had to move it around, and I cooked the gumbo, and I move it around, and I had to constantly check the temperature. And we could serve about 80 people when I first went out. And the funny thing is, we never intended to serve the food. That's a story for another day. But we never intended our food truck to serve the food that we actually ended up serving. But when we first opened, we could do 80 tickets a day, tops. It was horrible. It was like, how can I do this? By the time we were done, it was nothing for us to do 80 tickets an hour. We could do 150 an hour. So it was crazy. And we actually, let me backpedal. Okay. Skill wise, we could do 80 tickets a day. In a 4-hour festival. Towards the end, 80 tickets an hour was simple, and just with really cool menus. What I'm talking about is actually the amount of food that we could put out the window. Thank you. I kind of lost my thought for a second. I had to come back. So we could do 80 tickets, and in the end, 80 tickets was just nothing. I was just boom, 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 boom. So we were able to serve about 80 people is what I meant to say. But when we sold our food truck, we were capable of doing one event and serving 300 people. So it went from starting with the basics, finding out what we needed, upgrade what we need, and just limp along with the stuff we don't need. So having not had any debt on the food truck and not having any debt at all, we did have to go into debt to replace the engine when that thing finally blew. But that was the only debt. We were able to pay that off, and we were lucky to do that. So we didn't owe anything on the food truck, and we're able to pass that on to a great family, and things are still good. We weren't able to do it anymore, but it went on, and it never cost us anything as far as it didn't take away our family. One of the things we did was our food truck had its emergency fund. So we did the Dave Ramsey thing, and we break all kinds of Dave Ramsey rules, but our food truck, like our household, had its emergency fund. And most of that time, the emergency fund for the food truck ended up having to pay payroll, and that's kind of the way we used it, or to do any repairs. But if the truck failed, it was separated from our home. So we'd go find a different job, and we didn't have to worry about having to make a truck payment and all that stuff. We didn't have any of those payments. We could have come back. So when you start a business, the number one thing you need to do is think about debt. Don't be in debt to start the business. Start small, work big. You definitely will be more successful if you can figure out who you are. And like I said, when we first opened the food truck, it was not what we wanted to sell. And then we ended up selling an entirely different menu than we envisioned because we had to grow with it. So if you're thinking about starting a small business, regardless of what it is, whether it's food, retail, anything, here is the number one piece of advice for you to be successful. Number one, don't go in, when you pass that first meal out the door, don't be in debt. Because, or sell that first item, don't be in debt. Because if you are, you make dumb decisions. And I can tell you, when our emergency fund was gone, that's when we made dumb decisions. And usually when we didn't care about the money so much, the decisions really were the difference between being able to say no to something that we would probably end up losing money on and saying yes to something where we're going to make a whole lot of money. People wondered why we were never out all the time. And one of the reasons was we always think about everything. We didn't want to waste food, and we wanted to make sure that not only could we bring a great product to the community, but we wouldn't hurt ourselves by trying to do too much. So When I lost the use of my legs, the food truck was for sale and we didn't have the debt. We had a clean title. Makes a big difference. So that's the word for the day. Stay out of debt and you can do it. Just do it. There's nothing to do it but to do it. I'm gonna say this is part one. We'll probably have a couple more parts to this. So just stay out of debt, guys. And if you're not in, if you're in debt, walls, go do Dave Ramsey, do something. But just know that if you borrow money to get out of debt, you're not going to get out of debt. You're just going to get into more debt. The only way to get out of debt is to pay off the debt. So we're not completely there yet, but we will be. And probably, hopefully 8 months to a year. So have a great day. Work hard, be kind, have fun.